Hi everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to our June webinar, a beginner's look on how effective digital forms simplify data capture and easily route information. My name is Nicole Schmeida. I'm the marketing specialist here at DocuWare, and I'll be moderating the Q&A at the end of the panel. The webinar will be presented by Bob Mutarelli, Solution Architect at DocuWare. A few housekeeping items before we begin. The webinar is being recorded and will be emailed out to you along with a copy of the slides. And in the handout section of your GoToWebinar panel, you'll see there's 4 handouts you can download right now. We'll also email them to you as well. There's 2 case studies, a product data sheet on DocuWare Forms, and then a brochure about 19 customers who use DocuWare Forms, and you can read about how they're improving their organizational processes. And with that, if we look at the agenda on the right, you'll see for the first few minutes, Bob will introduce the DocuWare Forms product to you and quickly review some use cases. Then he'll go right into a live demo, and then we'll open it up at the end for Q&A. Thanks for joining us, and now I'll pass it off to Bob.
Thank you very much, Nicole. And you can hear me, I assume?
Yes.
Great. All right, let's first start with talking about what are DocuWare forms. So, if you look at the way web-based forms provide you control over the information that you're bringing into your system. Oftentimes, people struggle with the amount of paper and electronic invoices and whatnot that come in different formats. DocuWare forms is a way for us to control how the information that you receive from the public and from your users can effectively be processed and stored within a document management system. Some of the challenges that are addressed by DocuWare forms, if we look at the need sometimes to replace paper and forms, is really a good way to eliminate email documents and scanning documents and storing paper, whether it be in a file cabinet or even worse, if you're storing them in boxes in the corner of your office. All of that can be replaced by using something like DocuWare forms. Also, structuring the information up front it's a great way to eliminate or maybe cleanse your data. You don't eliminate bringing in blank fields or ambiguous answers, and you can set certain formats that, let's say, a phone number or email has to be in a specific format before you'll accept the data. Launching workflows. It's also a much faster way to introduce information into a digital process. And without a doubt, it provides access from mobile devices, which gives you access to your documents really anytime, anywhere from any device. And these days, with so many people working from home, it's very easy to see how that's going to be a benefit for many people. DocuWare forms, there is a designer client that is browser-based that you'll see on the left side of this example shows the interface for that designer, and we're going to be working within that in the demo. On the right side, you see the HTML version, what the user would see when they open the DocuWare form through their browser. And of course, after the DocuWare form is completed and submitted, it instantly becomes available through the secured repository, so that depending on the device you're using, whether it's a tablet or a phone or a browser on a PC, all of the security paradigms are in place that DocuWare provides, and the document is instantly available to be interacted with by anyone who's authorized to access the document. Now, I'm not going to get into the use cases specifically. I'm not going to read through these use cases, but there's one for in the HR application for new hires. There's one for communications use case. And of course, there's always our own example, which we use DocuWare internally to process purchase orders. So these are all going to be in the handout, and I'll let you can read them at your leisure. There's no reason to go over them now because I do want to get into the demonstration. So I'm going to turn off my webcam, and I'm going to switch over to the demo system now. All right. I have a couple of different examples I'd like to showcase, if you will, within this demonstration or within this training session. What I've done is within our employee management application, I have created a copy of one of the forms that we use. Okay, so the document that I'm going to use is the new hire requisition. Now, I'll launch the document as it is now, as it was created. Okay, so this is the web form. It's pre-populated with a date and the person that is requesting this form. So it takes the login name of the user, and there are certain pieces of information that are required, specifically a job title, a location, which comes from a drop-down list, the department, which comes from a drop-down list or a select list. And there's various pieces of information that we can put in here, a projected start date, and there's a select list of the available job descriptions. So we're going to start by taking a look at this form and see what it takes to create something like this, and also what it takes to edit and modify something like this. So what I did was I made a copy of this form, and we'll start by editing that. Now, again, you see that this is really basically the same form that we just looked at, with the exception of some missing pieces, specifically the date and a couple of the data entry points. The DocuWare Forms interface is very user-friendly. It's really just a drag and drop process. And then, you know, there's a phrase called Wysiwyg, which means what you see is what you get. So when you see the information, the data points on this document, when you open it in the browser, that's basically what you're going to see based on the behaviors involved. And I mentioned behaviors because that's one of the features of DocuWare Forms, and we'll see that in a couple of minutes. But let's start by putting back some of the fields that I removed. And the first one that I removed was the date. Now you'll see on the list of fields on the left side, I have a lot of different options available to me, and one of them is date. So if I click on date and drag it onto the palette where this form is, you can see options where I can put it down, right? This dashed line box is where I can put it. So I'm going to put it back up at the top and tell it on the settings on the right side that I would like this to be filled with the current date. So that means that anytime this form launches, this field will automatically be loaded with the current date. That doesn't mean I can't change it. By clicking on the little calendar, I could go in there and select another date if it were appropriate to do so in the use case of this form. But I will pre-fill it with today's date. One of the other pieces of information that I removed was a drop-down on this side. Right? There's a drop-down for the department. So what I do is simply scrolling down this list of fields on the left side, I can take that drop-down option, put it where I want it to go, and give it some field specifications. Now, specifically, I have to give it a label. So I think we call this department. And there's two different options for a select list like this. I can make it user provided, which means if I do nothing, I can type in, you know, this is where I set option 1. This is where I set option 2. Quite literally, I could say finance or sales if I wanted to create a finite list like this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to choose to use a select list. Now, a select list is defined back at the back end within the DocuWare configuration. But by selecting select list, I'm shown, oddly enough, a select list of the select lists. And I can choose the one that's appropriate here. In this case, I want to use departments. So by clicking that, this dropdown will be populated with the contents of whatever the select list departments is defined to use within the DocuWare system. And I could put some instructions like, like we see here on the job location, please select office name or something like that, in order to give a little more clarity or detail to the user when he's filling out this form. But that's all I need for that field label in order to give the user an option of selecting from the list of departments. One of the other things that I removed was, I think it was what else is there? Okay, I removed the requester area. Now this requester was pre-filled with the login of the user. In this case, I'm logged in as the admin. We see that here in the user interface. So all I need to do to use that, is to put in what's called a single line text. Again, I'll put it in that same position that I removed it from, and tell it that I want to predefine this entry right here, utilizing one of the options available. I can either use the email of the user, current date and time, current date, login of the user, which is what I want, the internal name of the user, and now this field is ready to go. I mentioned behaviors earlier. Behaviors are one of those things that help to keep a dynamic form to allow it to be able to change based on the needs of the user. One of those items specifically is here. We see that there's something that says part-time employment only, looking for the number of hours per week and the frequency of the work. These fields, if I look at the if I launch this form and look at these fields, they won't be displayed, and they won't be displayed for a reason, because there's a behavior associated with it. We see here at the bottom right side, this field is identified as having the behavior part-time employment. Frequency is the same behavior. So let's take a look at those behaviors and see what they're defined. There's an icon here that's called field behaviors. By clicking on that, I'm presented with a list of the field behaviors. In this case, there's only the one, part-time employment. So what this is saying is that the part-time employment behavior is only in use when the following conditions are met. If employment type equals part-time, then it's a required field. Otherwise, keep it hidden. Let's see what that looks like now in the form itself. So if I wanted to test this form, I could use the preview button and tell it I want to preview it on a desktop, or as if it were a desktop. So here's the form, and you'll notice that the employment type is not pre-selected, but if I select full-time, nothing changes. But the behavior dictated that if the employment type was part-time, if part-time is specified, then this area appears on the form. And once it does appear on the form, it is now required. But as a full-time, it was not required. Let me close out of this and talk about some of the other tabs that we see on the design tool. Switching from the designer to the submission tab, we have a couple of different options for document style. This is right now a web form, and what that means is that the web form browser that you see is what is going to get stored in the electronic repository for DocuWare. I'm going to switch over to a different system now. This is our invoice processing system, and I'll show you that there is. Let's use this form. This is the service registration form for the invoice processing system. One of the things that, or a few of the things that are provided here that are kind of advanced topics for DocuWare forms are things like hiding the password is one of the options that's available here, and the formatting. We'll see here that the email format, if I were to enter something as, let's say, Bob, and I don't use the @ sign, I accidentally use the hashtag, we notice that it comes up and tells me it's an invalid email. So the formatting allows me to maintain the quality of the information I'm putting into my system by forcing it to use a specific format. Another example of that with the new vendor onboarding form, we'll see things like a pre-formatted field like the zip code. I could tell it to use the format of zip +4. We see the example. If I were to enter, a shortened zip code, only 5 digits, it doesn't allow me to proceed. But if I enter the zip +4, it then allows me to move on. The same thing with a phone number. I could define a phone number as a potential, as a format. These formats are defined within the DocuWare configuration, and they're identified on the forms. If I look at, in this case, the new vendor onboarding form. So again, the same browser, the same developer tool, but here's the zip code, and we tell it to use the format, the field mask of the zip +4, or the phone number is set to use the field mask national phone number, as opposed to international phone number. There are a couple of different ones available, and provides, in the instructions for the user, provides an example. So that's some of the ways the DocuWare forms can make sure that the data that you extract from the form meets the criteria necessary within the business unit. Moving on within the options available in the designer, I have the web form versus merge form. What merge form does is allow me to take the information that is supplied in a web form and put it into some other document. I'll explain. Let me save this and go back out to our employee onboarding form. So if I look at the employee onboarding form as a document, right, information is specified like the first name, last name, maiden name, birth date, all the things that are important for an employee who's being onboarded. So by taking this information and using it in merge forms, what I'm doing is I'm eliminating the need for this particular new employee to have to enter his name, his address, his social security number, 15 times when he's filling out his onboarding packet. And what that looks like here in the Merge Forms tab is we identify the individual forms, and they each have their own editor. So if I needed to identify or make a change, let's say, from 2019 to 2020, the government has changed the W-4 and things moved a little bit. Well, this is where, in this Merge Form Designer, we identify where on these other forms to put various information. So we can see that, where can I turn that on? So we can see that this particular field, let's say first name, goes here, middle initial, last name, date of birth. All of these fields that are required can easily be mapped onto this form, and it really is just a matter of dragging, pointing to, and drawing a box in order to get this information mapped. And in this case, there's 3 different forms that the information from the web form is going to be merged onto. And if I come back here, I can show you actually in an example I ran a little while ago. So here's an example of the information being loaded. This is an example of the W4 that I ran earlier. So we see that the information that was on the web form, the first name, last name, address, city, state, zip, are all pre-filled on the form. So a merge form is a way for us to effectively accept information in one place and disseminate it across multiple documents in multiple places. The I-9, being a different form, is simply mapped differently so that the first name, last name, all the information provided goes into the appropriate place for that particular merge form. Okay, let's see. Now those are examples of what I think are pretty reasonable, pretty, I don't want to say simple, but easy to learn forms. Let's take a quick look at what happens when we submit a document, where it goes. So the forms are exposed directly from the user interface. And here is a list of all of the forms that are available to me as the admin, and we'll notice that within the admin login, I have the ability to edit any of these documents. If I were to log in as someone else, in this case, our fictitious user, Elizabeth Cash, we'll see that she has the ability to open this form. Right? Let's open the new hire requisition form. You know what? We might be better off. Let's do this. Let's close this down. Let's take a look at one last change I'd like to make on this, on our test form or our demonstration form. One of the things I do like to do is to personalize the document a little bit. So if I wanted to put some, I mean, I have a couple of different fixed elements I could put in here. Things like an image or a spacer. A lot of times this bar is called a spacer, and it helps to line up different pieces of information. But let's put an image on here. Let's say we wanted to put the company logo on this document. So I open up into a Windows Explorer window that allows me to navigate to and select the image I want to put on the document. So here we see in this case, the DocuWare logo. We talked about the submission. This is only a web form, not a merge form. What we wanted to say when the document is submitted. So this one just says new hire request submitted successfully. The output, we tell it within DocuWare what store dialog to use for this document, which identifies the indexing. So the indexing is something that allows us to identify the form once it's stored in DocuWare. And because I just added some new, technically I've added new fields to this, like the date, I simply have to tell it where to find on the web form. And that's the date field that I just specified. The same thing with the department. I tell it from the list of fields to choose department. And the last one, I think, was the requester. I identify that from the field name I gave it on the document. Because I didn't give it a name. It was called single user text. Requester. So now I can identify that by the name I gave it. So the last thing I do is assign permissions to this document. So who can use it and who can administer it, right? That's the difference we just saw, is the admin can use it and administer it, and people in the role of departmental manager can only use it. And that's my friend Elizabeth Cash. She is a finance manager. She can use the document but can't administer it. The other thing I can do when it comes to security is identify this as a public form. Now, the form that we saw a little while ago, the new employee enrollment form, is a form that goes out to someone who's not yet not a user in the system. So what we can do is identify that as a public form and configure it to use a specific user ID and password. And when the document gets submitted, it will utilize those credentials when the document is stored. So I just need to save and publish this document. So now when Elizabeth, I'll just refresh her browser so that I'm sure that she's looking at the latest ones. When she launches that document, here's the logo. Her user ID is specified as requester, and the department and other missing fields are now populated or now available. And just the last thing, really, I promise the last thing I'm going to do is show you an example of a document that is probably what we consider a pretty extensive document. That's because it utilizes different behaviors, right? This is what's called a provisioning checklist. And once it's filled out with the new employee's name and address, or I'm sorry, name and department, different departments need to provide services in order to provision this new employee. So by clicking on the IT manager, we see a whole nother section of this form opens up. And we can do the same thing for the facilities manager. Again, an additional area opens up. And even within this additional area, we can expand that out to include other things like the different options that need to be specified when they provision or when they supply the required information for this new employee. So this is an example of, as I said, a pretty extensive DocuWare form. So at this point, I think I've basically covered all of the points I plan to for this demonstration. As you can see, the amount of things that the DocuWare forms are capable of certainly would allow it to be a much longer training or demonstration. So at this point, though, I want to turn it back over to Nicole and see if we can address any of the questions that might have been popping up.
All right, thanks, Bob. Thanks for that great demo. So just to recap what everyone saw, again, the demo was introductory, but we just want to let you know, as you saw, that there was an easy-to-use, intuitive builder, no coding or programming experience necessary. You eliminate a lot of manual steps for the user and yourself when you build these forms, and then you can also link them to workflows to automatically send them to the right person. And of course, you can access these forms and use them from anywhere using the DocuWare Cloud solution. So if you go to the next slide, you can see in the handout section, like I mentioned before, there's a few case studies you can download, but I wanted to highlight this one. It comes from 10 Fitness. They're a health and wellness gym. They use DocuWare forms to improve their membership change requests. So before DocuWare forms, they had people come on site and fill out the forms, but that was pretty slow. So now with digital forms, we're able to send the forms directly to the customer's phones or email them as links. And then once the members complete the forms, they're automatically sent back to the call center where staff access them using the DocuWare document management system. And this helps save time for both the members and the staff. And you can see the quote from the Director of Corporate Benefits, Brent Adams. He sees what's happening in real time. They save several hours compared to before. They wanted to make a better customer experience, and they did that with DocuWare. So Now let's open it up for Q&A. I saw some questions come in before. So again, what you saw was introductory, but of course we want to continue the conversation with you all. If you want to see more and have more thoughts or questions, you can request a personalized demo at docuware.com/forms. Email us anytime at contact.us@docuware.com. It doesn't have to be today. It could be next week, next month, whenever you want to. Shoot us an email. Or if you have an authorized Docker partner already, definitely reach out to them to get started. So with that, let's kick it off with the first question. Can forms be used for output as well as input?
Yeah, and any form that is output as well as input. So the web form itself is accepting input from the user, and then when the document is stored, it becomes output. It becomes a content within the document management system. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but once the form is part of the DocuWare repository, it's available for any of the features that we can utilize that you need within DocuWare, including things like downloading it or having it processed through an electronic workflow process.
Got it. All right. Next question is, does DocuWare offer any templates that would give a starting place for the forms?
No, no templates that I'm aware of. Within some of our pre-configured solutions, like I showed the employee management system and the some from the invoice processing system, these have forms associated with them already, but a blanket generic DocuWare trial I don't believe has samples or templates already built.
Okay. Next question, can I have one field determine what values may be available for a second field? For example, if I choose division, can I only allow the departments in that division?
Yes, what you're describing is something we call a cascading or selective select lists. So based on the answer from one select list depends on what the other. That is something that's available within DocuWare. I don't believe that is yet available within the forms, though. So once the select lists are defined in the form and they get introduced into DocuWare, I believe the selective select list would then be effective within DocuWare.
Got it. And I just want to remind everyone on the line, I will send a recording out along with the slides in case anyone needs to hop off. Right, next question is, that forms list you showed, has that been created or is that automatic? The list of like all the different forms in like Elizabeth Cash's.
Yeah, that's really whatever forms are defined to the system. If the use box is checked, I talked about some of the permissions. If the use box is checked, that user will see it in their forms list. If it's not, then they wouldn't see the document.
Got it.
The form,
All right.
I'm sorry.
Hi, the examples you were showing are office-related forms. Can we do tailboard briefing forms at multiple sites?
Not sure what that is, so I would be hesitant to try to offer an answer.
Okay, that came from Matt. If you want to send us an email at contact.us, we'll definitely get the right answer for you there. Next question is, does the user have the ability to change values?
Change values. When the user, being the person filling out the form, has the ability to enter the data based on the format of the input string. So I showed a couple of different examples of things like phone numbers, zip codes, email addresses. They have to submit to a certain format before the form will accept them. I'm not sure I'm answering your question, though, because it sounds to me like, I'm sorry, could you repeat that one, Nicole?
Yeah. Does the user have the ability to change values?
They
If the
can't
user, oh,
change.
Denise, if the user has the use role, can that user change values once the form is in DocuWare?
Once the form is in DocuWare, it becomes a static document. So it's no longer affected by things like the select lists or input strings. So once the web form is filled out and stored, it becomes a static document. Now, Within DocuWare, there's ways to change index values, but I'm not sure that that's really what you're talking about, Denise.
Okay, got it. Next question, what does the document look like on a mobile device?
Oh, okay. That can actually, I believe we can do that as part of the, nope, not there, as part of the preview. So within the designer, I showed you that we could preview this. I'm offered the option of desktop or mobile. So it gives you an idea in the preview what it would look like on a mobile device. I can't connect my phone to the webinar at this point, so I really can't show you that, but it does have the same functionality, drop downs and whatnot, but it does automatically format it for the mobile device. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, speaking on the topic of mobile, can we capture the geolocation of the person filling out the form?
I don't believe that capability exists, not within DocuWare anyway. If there was something in the phone that was able to do that, if we were able to draw on some value, no. The more I think about it, the more I'd like to say no.
Oh, okay. We can,
We could
gotcha.
follow up with that if we have to, though, but I don't believe that's possible.
Yeah, definitely. You can send us an email at contact.us@docuware.com. Is the provisioning checklist a default list or something that you made?
That was built. Yeah, I use that as an example of a more advanced form because that document was built. If we were to look at the provisioning document in the editor, okay, if I were to show you the behaviors, for example, in this particular document, you could see that there are various actions based on every department that would need to do something. So if you scroll down the document, you'll see that everything is displayed initially in the design tool, but it's also only controlled by the behaviors that are specified. So yes, all of this stuff all of this input area was created when this form was initially generated.
All right, cool. Next question is, we have a bit more questions, so we'll try to answer as many as we can. Again, if you have to hop off, look out for an email tomorrow morning. I'll send you the recording. So we have a question or kind of a request from David. He is asking is there any way to see a PTO request form example, how that is submitted, how the supervisor would be notified, and how they would approve it? Maybe like a quick workflow example?
Sure, that's absolutely possible to do that, but within the confines of today's demonstration, I don't think so. Feel free to reach out. That would be part of our employee management pre-configured solution demonstration. I can quickly open up the workflow designer and give you an idea for the flow. But basically, when a PTO request comes in, it's processed. There's a lot of processing that happens behind the scenes to make sure it's valid. It checks to see how much time the requester has available. Do they have enough to cover their request? Are they going to go into arrears on their request? And then ultimately we assign it to, we look up their manager's name. You'll see in the workflow process that after we get the employee data, we get the manager's data. We assign the approver based on who the manager is. And then ultimately a task will be assigned to them to approve the PTO request. And once it's approved, it goes through the rest of the process where then it subtracts the amount of the requests from the amount available. So you see where we're going with this. We actually maintain all of the values within the employee's master record. So, to see all that in action, we'd be happy to do a demonstration for you, but it would be a little too lengthy to set that up right now. Sorry.
Okay, all right. So David, if you want to go to docuware.com/forms and request to get a personalized demo, or if you already have a Docuware partner you're working with, you can definitely reach out to them. Thank you for that. So we're at 2:41 Eastern. We'll go for 4 more minutes, so we'll end at 2:45. So let's see. Once the data from the form is in Docuware, is there any way to access it from an outside database system?
From an outside database, well, once it's part of Docuware, it becomes part of the file cabinet or the repository. If I wanted to, let's use I-9s as a good example, because as I'm reminded often by one of my colleagues that I-9s are one of those documents that usually results in some type of an audit. So if I were to do a quick search and find all of my I-9 documents, if I needed to make them available to another system for processing, the quickest and easiest way to do that would be to search for them, get them into a result list like this, and then simply export them to a CSV file. And once I exported it to a CSV file, it's available as it would be to any other system. So here's an example of the data that would be extracted based on that export.
Got it. All right, we have a few people asking about signatures. Can you include electronic signatures in the forms, and how does that work?
Thank you. Electronic signatures are a new feature within Docuware. I didn't set anything up. I really didn't have the time to get that prepared today. But yes, we can utilize an electronic signature once the form is stored. The electronic signature process would take over and issue the request for the signature. Signature is then provided, and then the document is stored again.
Got it. And just a few people asking similar questions. I think you answered this before, but after a merge form is submitted, can you edit them?
Well, I assume you're talking about editing the PDF document. Like this, for example, this is the PDF for this I-9, and again, I know that I-9 should really never be edited. But like any other document that Docuware stores in a repository, if you have the authority to do it, you can right-click on the document and choose the edit option, which would then open the document in the locally installed application that would edit it. So in this case, it's PDF. I don't have Adobe on this particular machine, but if I were to click edit, it would attempt to launch Adobe in order to edit the document. And when you exit out of it, it would automatically save it back into the repository. I hope that answers your question.
Great. All right, let's take one more question and then we'll wrap it up. And if we didn't get to your question today, or you definitely want more information, Bob, if you could throw up that last slide again. There's various ways you can contact us at any time, whether it's now or later on when you're ready. Docuware.com/forms, contact.us@docuware.com, or reach out to your authorized Docuware partner. Look out for an email tomorrow morning containing the recording, the slides, and the handouts, so you can review that anytime and share it with your colleagues. Let us know if you have any questions or comments, and that should be it. So
Great.
hope everyone has a great rest of your day, and we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thanks for your help, Nicole. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Take care.